Some people celebrate their birthdays with loud parties, attention and hundreds of wishes, but others quietly move through the day as if it's nothing special. No cake, no noise, no excitement, just another day on the calendar. But here's the real question: what's going on inside their minds? Why do some people feel nothing about a day that's supposed to celebrate them? Today, we'll explore the hidden psychology of people who treat their birthday like it's just a normal day. People who treat their birthday like a normal day often embody something called emotional minimalism, a quiet but powerful psychological stance where emotional regulation takes priority over external validation. To understand them, you have to realize that not everyone experiences joy through public celebration. For many, emotions run deep, but stay unspoken, and this restraint doesn't mean they lack feeling. It often means they feel too much. Birthdays can be overwhelming, not because of the noise or gifts, but because of the internal mirror they hold up. It's a day that says, "You've been here another year. How do you feel about it?" For some, that question isn't simple. They've learned to manage emotions with balance, not bursts. Instead of seeking dopamine hits from attention or affirmation, they find calm in consistency. When someone practices emotional minimalism, they tend to believe that emotional control equals personal strength. It's not about rejecting happiness, it's about choosing peace over performance. In a culture that constantly glorifies excitement and spectacle, that decision can look cold, but it's actually deeply intentional. These individuals are often introspective, grounded, and attuned to their own boundaries. They understand that joy doesn't have to be broadcast to be real. To them, celebrating quietly or not at all isn't neglecting themselves, it's preserving their mental space. There's also a layer of emotional protection here. Birthdays can resurface unhealed memories or highlight relationships that have faded. The act of not celebrating can be a way to avoid disappointment, an unconscious defense mechanism. If no one is invited, no one can forget. By lowering expectations, they reduce emotional risk. This is especially common in people who've experienced emotional neglect or inconsistency growing up. Over time, they internalize a lesson: don't expect too much from the world, and you'll never be hurt by it. But as they mature, that caution transforms from avoidance to wisdom. They stop expecting others to create their happiness because they've learned to generate it themselves. Their approach also ties to self-definition. People who treat their birthday as an ordinary day often resist societal scripts that dictate how joy should look. They're skeptical of the idea that certain days must be amplified to have meaning. Their emotional landscape values authenticity over conformity. If they don't feel celebratory, they won't pretend to be, and that honesty can be liberating. It's a quiet declaration that says, my emotions belong to me, not to tradition, not to social media, not to anyone else. Emotional minimalism isn't apathy, it's mastery. It's the ability to feel without needing to perform, to exist without needing to announce. These individuals live in emotional equilibrium. Their calmness is their celebration. Their stillness is their strength. On the surface, it might look like indifference, but underneath, it's one of the most stable and mature emotional states a person can reach. The peace of not needing the world to remind them of their worth. In today's hyper-connected world, joy has become a performance. Social media has turned birthdays into public spectacles, a stage where everyone feels the need to prove that they are loved, happy, and successful. But some people quietly step away from that stage. They don't post pictures, don't announce their day, and don't seek validation from hundreds of digital happy birthdays. This isn't because they dislike joy or connection, it's because they reject the idea of performative joy, the expectation to act happy for others, instead of genuinely feeling it for themselves. People who treat their birthdays like normal days often carry a deep awareness of this illusion. They recognize how easily celebrations become about appearances rather than emotions. For them, joy is not something to display, it's something to experience privately. They understand that happiness doesn't grow louder when shared publicly. Sometimes it grows quieter, deeper, and more personal. By choosing not to make their birthday a social event, they reclaim control over their emotional authenticity. They're saying, my happiness doesn't need witnesses to be real. There's also a quiet rebellion in this behavior, a psychological independence that refuses to conform to cultural expectations. Society constantly tells us to celebrate big, to make it special, as if not doing so is a sign of sadness. But for emotionally self-reliant individuals, resisting that norm becomes an act of self-truth. They don't need noise to feel significant. They don't need a crowd to validate their existence. Instead, they anchor their worth in something internal, a sense of identity that isn't dependent on how others perceive them. This rejection of performative joy also reflects emotional maturity. These people have often outgrown the need to perform emotions for approval. They've learned that forced enthusiasm feels hollow. They've felt the emptiness of being surrounded by people yet feeling unseen, or receiving dozens of messages that mean nothing. They crave depth over display, so rather than chase the brief dopamine rush of attention, they find meaning in ordinary peace. They might spend their birthday working, reading, or simply existing. Not because they don't care, but because they're aligned with what truly fulfills them. There's also an element of psychological clarity in their choice. When you stop performing, you begin to notice what's real, who remembers without reminders, who cares without being told to, who shows up quietly. By not making their birthday an event, they filter out performative relationships. It's not cynicism, it's awareness. They prefer genuine connection over polite obligation. They'd rather have one sincere moment than 100 empty gestures. Ultimately, treating a birthday like a normal day isn't a lack of excitement. It's an expression of self-respect. It's saying, I don't need to prove I'm happy, I simply am. In that quiet refusal to perform, they embody one of the rarest forms of strength, authenticity in a world addicted to appearances. For many people, birthdays are filled with laughter, decorations, and a sense of excitement. But for others, the day feels heavier, not because they dislike attention, but because birthdays serve as a powerful mirror of time. They don't see candles and confetti, they see reflection, memory, and quiet realization. Every passing year becomes a reminder of how time slips away, how people change, and how life subtly shifts beneath them. This awareness is what psychologists often refer to as temporal introspection, a deep, almost meditative awareness of time and existence. People who treat their birthday like a normal day often live in this space of reflection, rather than celebration. When you become conscious of time, a birthday no longer feels like a reason to party. It feels like a checkpoint, a pause between what's been lived and what's left. For some, that reflection brings gratitude, but for others, it brings discomfort. It forces them to confront unfulfilled goals, lost relationships, or the fading innocence of youth. In a world obsessed with productivity and progress, the reminder of another year passing can quietly press on insecurities. Am I where I thought I'd be? Did I make my time matter? These thoughts aren't dramatic, they're human. And for those who think deeply, a birthday is less a celebration of age and more an encounter with impermanence. This mindset doesn't mean they are sad or negative. On the contrary, it often shows emotional depth and wisdom. They understand that every year lived is also a year gone, and that truth carries weight. It humbles them. While others distract themselves with noise, they listen to the silence, and in that silence, they process life more honestly. Instead of escaping the feeling of time, they sit with it. They let it remind them that nothing is permanent, not even themselves. That's not darkness, that's awareness. Some people find this awareness unsettling because it dissolves illusions. Celebrations can make time feel suspended, but those who see through that illusion can't easily ignore the deeper truth. To them, birthdays are symbolic, a yearly whisper from life saying, you're still here, but for how long? This isn't morbid, it's clarifying. It pushes them toward authenticity. They become more selective with who they spend time with, more careful about what deserves their energy, and more present in the moments that matter. In many ways, treating their birthday like a normal day is their way of integrating time, instead of running from it. They don't need the distraction of festivities to acknowledge existence. They've made peace with the fact that time will pass whether it's celebrated or not. For them, awareness itself becomes a form of celebration, a quiet, sacred honoring of the fact that they are still evolving, still breathing, still here. It's not about ignoring life's passage, but about meeting it with humility, reflection, and silent gratitude. There comes a point in a person's emotional evolution when they no longer need the world to remind them of their worth. For people who treat their birthday like an ordinary day, that point has often already arrived. They don't need a cake, gifts, or 100 messages to feel significant. because their validation no longer depends on external recognition. What they've cultivated is a form of silent self-worth, an internal sense of value that exists independently of how others treat them. This kind of mindset isn't born from arrogance or coldness. It's born from maturity, from having walked through enough emotional noise to understand that real peace doesn't require an audience. Most people spend their lives trying to feel seen. Birthdays, for many, are an opportunity to fill that gap. A day where the attention momentarily centers on them, but those who found internal validation have already done the difficult psychological work of seeing themselves. They've faced their insecurities, built their confidence quietly, and stopped chasing approval from the outside world. Their happiness isn't measured by how many people remember their day, it's measured by how deeply they know who they are every other day of the year. This kind of self-worth is rare because it goes against how society conditions us. From childhood, we're taught to associate special treatment with special value, that if people celebrate us, it means we matter. But emotional independence redefines that logic. People who treat their birthday normally have learned that meaning doesn't come from being celebrated. It comes from being content within oneself. Their calmness isn't a lack of joy. It's the result of inner balance. They have nothing to prove, nothing to display, and nothing to demand from the world. They exist in quiet confidence. There's also a spiritual undertone to this kind of detachment. When someone stops needing to be celebrated, it often means they've connected with something deeper than ego. They no longer crave validation because they've realized that worth isn't something given, it's something inherent. Their silence on their birthday isn't emptiness, it's fullness. It's the peace that comes when you no longer need recognition to feel alive. It's a subtle but powerful freedom, the kind that makes external praise feel optional rather than essential. Of course, others might misinterpret this behavior. To an outsider, it can seem like emotional numbness or indifference, but the truth is quite the opposite. These individuals often carry a quiet gratitude for existence itself. They celebrate in their own way, maybe through reflection, solitude, or a small moment of self-care, but they don't broadcast it. Their birthday isn't an event, it's a reminder of their ongoing journey towards self-awareness. They understand that when self-worth becomes internal, celebration becomes a state of being, not a single day. In their silence lies strength, the kind of strength that doesn't need applause to know it's alive. So if you're someone who treats your birthday like a normal day, don't let anyone tell you that you're cold or detached. Maybe you've just outgrown the need for validation. Because sometimes, the loudest form of peace is silence. This is psychrypt, decoding the mind, one truth at a time.